I arrived home 3 days early to the sound of a drill screaming like it was butchering my $880,000 fortress. Through the gap in the garage door, I saw my custom slate gray walls being smashed to pieces, yet the thing that froze my blood was not the workman but the triumphant smile on my sister's face as she waved a building permit signed in my name that I had never seen before. My name is Aurora Rivera, and I had spent the last 6 weeks in Chicago putting out fires for a client who treated logistics like a suggestion rather than a science. My body was vibrating with that specific kind of exhaustion that goes bone deep, the kind that makes your eyelids feel like they are made of lead. I had changed my flight to get home 3 days early, desperate for the silence of my own home. I drove my car toward the sanctuary I had purchased 2 years ago, a modern fortress of glass and steel that had cost me $880,000. It was an obscene amount of money, but I had paid every cent of the mortgage for the privilege of isolation. I wanted to walk through my front door, lock the world out, and sleep for 18 hours straight. I turned the corner onto my street, anticipating the clean, sharp lines of my driveway. Instead, I slammed on the brakes. There was a white van parked in my driveway. It was not a delivery vehicle. It was a beat-up, rusted Ford Econoline with no company logo, parked aggressively crooked so that its rear tires were crushing my Japanese boxwoods. The air, which usually smelled of pine and rain this time of year, was thick with the chemical tang of primer and the chalky, dry taste of pulverized drywall. Then, I heard it, a high-pitched, grinding screech that vibrated through the chassis of my car and straight into my molars. Someone was taking a drill to my house. I stepped out of the car, my leather bag slipping from my shoulder to hit the pavement with a dull thud. The garage door, a heavy reinforced steel panel that I kept meticulously polished, was cracked open about 3 feet. I ducked under the heavy door, my heels clicking on concrete that was no longer smooth. I stopped dead, my breath catching in my throat. My garage was a war zone. The custom slate gray walls I had agonized over, selecting the ones I had paid a premium to have imported, were hammered into jagged ruins. Sheets of expensive pink soundproofing material were ripped out and scattered across the floor like dirty snow. Worst of all, the floor itself was gone. The epoxy-coated surface I kept spotless enough to eat off of had been sliced open. A jagged trench ran right down the center of the room, exposing the raw, damp earth beneath, with white PVC pipes laying there like the exposed intestines of my home. Standing in the center of this debris field, looking for all the world like they were posing for a catalog photo, were my parents and my sister, Kendra. They were not wearing hard hats. They were not covered in dust. They looked comfortable. Kendra Vale, my younger sister, spotted me first. She did not look guilty. She did not flinch. She wore a pristine white sundress that seemed laughably out of place amidst the construction dust. She smiled, a wide, bright expression that did not reach her eyes, and threw her arms out as if she were unveiling a masterpiece on a home renovation show. "Surprise!" she shouted over the dying whine of a saw. "This garage is going to be my bedroom." I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving my hands cold. The sheer audacity of the statement made the room spin. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling not with fear, but with a rage so sudden and hot, it felt like heartburn. "Who are these people?" I pointed at a man in a dusty t-shirt holding a reciprocating saw. He looked at me, then at my father, then back at me. "We are the contractors," the man said, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of a gloved hand. "Just finishing up the rough-in for the plumbing. We got to lay the pipes before we pour the new cement." "Get out," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "Get out of my house right now." The man did not move. He looked confused. "Ma'am, we have a contract. We took a deposit." "I did not sign a contract," I snapped, stepping over a pile of shattered drywall to get into his face. "I am the owner of this house. Show me the contract." The contractor reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded, stained piece of paper. He hesitated, looking between me and my family, I got the deposit from the older woman, he said, nodding toward my mother. She said she was handling the renovation for her daughter, and we got the paperwork. Everything is legal. I looked at my mother. She was inspecting her fingernails, refusing to meet my gaze. Mom. We needed to get started. Aurora, she said, her voice carrying that dismissive tone she used when I was a teenager, as if I were making a fuss over spilled milk rather than a demolished house. Kendra needs a place to stay. You were in Chicago. We didn't want to bother you with the details. How did you get in? I demanded, turning to Kendra. I have smart locks. I have a security system. Kendra reached into the pocket of her dress and dangled a single silver key. It caught the light from the naked bulb swinging overhead. Remember your housewarming party 6 months ago? You left the spare set in the kitchen junk drawer while you were showing everyone the patio. I grabbed it, just in case of emergencies. This is not an emergency, I hissed. This is a felony. I turned back to the crew, my hands shaking. Stop working, I yelled. Pack up your tools and leave. If you cut one more wire, if you hammer one more nail, I will sue you into bankruptcy. The room went silent, but nobody moved. The workers didn't look at me. They looked at my father. My father. A man who had never paid a mortgage on a house this size in his life, puffed out his chest and gave the foreman a reassuring nod. Keep working, my father said, his voice booming. She is just tired. She just got off a flight. She gets cranky when she is jet-lagged. The contractor hesitated. He looked at me, the woman in the sharp business suit with the wild eyes, and then at the older man who looked calm and authoritative. He made a choice. He turned back to the wall and raised his saw. The noise started again. It was a physical blow. In my own home, the home I paid for with 80-hour work weeks and missed holidays, I was invisible. I was the intruder. I walked up to the contractor and ripped the plug of his saw from the extension cord. The silence that rushed back into the room was heavy and suffocating. You are being selfish, my mother spat out, finally looking at me with genuine anger. You live in this massive house all by yourself, 4 bedrooms, Aurora, 4, and you won't give your sister a garage. She is family. She is blood. I am not running a shelter, I said, my voice shaking, and you do not get to tear down my walls without asking me. It is just a garage, Kendra said, stepping over the trench in the floor to stand in front of me. She was shorter than me, but she always knew how to make me feel small. I am just optimizing the space. You weren't using it. Why are you so greedy? Get out, I repeated. Pointing to the open door, Kendra laughed. It was a soft, dry sound. You aren't going to make us leave. You won't call the police. You won't sue us. You love family too much. You always fold. Aurora, that is who you are. I looked around the garage. The air was filled with dust motes dancing in the light. The smell of raw concrete was overwhelming. I looked at the hole in the floor where my car should have been. I looked at the smirk on my sister's face. She wasn't taunting me. She was stating a fact. She believed, with every fiber of her being, that my boundaries were suggestions and my property was a community resource. She was wrong. I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of my sanctuary, and I realized that the woman who had left for Chicago 6 weeks ago might have folded, but the woman standing here now, watching her family strip mine her life for parts, was someone else entirely. Kendra thought she was moving in. She had no idea she had just broken into a war zone. I am giving you exactly 60 seconds to get off my property, I said. My voice was no longer shouting. It had dropped to a level that was terrifyingly calm, the kind of tone I used in boardrooms when I was about to fire a vendor for breach of contract. If you are still standing on this concrete when that minute is up, I am calling the sheriff. My mother's face twisted. The mask of the concerned, helpful matriarch dissolved instantly, replaced by a sharp, ugly sneer that highlighted the wrinkles around her mouth. She took a step toward me, her heels crunching on the debris of my wall. Oh, stop the drama. Aurora, she snapped. Her voice was shrill, bouncing off the exposed studs. It is just a garage. You act like we are murdering someone. We are trying to help you make use of this empty mausoleum you call a home." "This is not help," I said. Cutting her off, I gestured to the slashed floorboards and the ruined insulation. "This is criminal trespassing. This is destruction of private property. Being my mother does not give you a demolition permit. Family is not a legal defense for vandalism." Kendra rolled her eyes, leaning back against a stack of 2x4s as if she were waiting for a boring meeting to end. "I am just optimizing the space. Aurora, you have 3,000 square feet for one person. It is wasteful. I am doing you a favor by adding value to the asset." "You are destroying the equity," I corrected her. I turned my back on them, refusing to engage with their twisted logic any further. I zeroed in on the foreman. He was holding the reciprocating saw by the handle, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. "What is your name?" I asked him. "Mike," he muttered. "Mike," I said, locking eyes with him. "I want you to listen to me very carefully. The contract you signed is void. It is void ab initio, because the person who signed it does not hold the title to this property. I am the sole owner. My name is on the deed. My name is on the mortgage. Did you pull the title deed before you took the deposit?" Mike shifted his weight. "Look, lady, we just took the job. We didn't run a title search for a drywall job." "You should have," I said, "because right now, you are an accessory to property damage. I want you to pack up your tools. I want you to write down exactly what work was done here today. Acknowledge that you were ordered to stop by the homeowner, and then I want you to leave. If you come back tomorrow, I will have you arrested for trespassing." Mike looked at my father. He was looking for permission, for someone to tell him that the crazy lady in the suit was wrong. "Don't listen to her," my father boomed. He stepped forward, trying to use his physical size to intimidate me, a tactic that had worked when I was 12, but lost its efficacy when I started making 3 times his salary. "Aurora, are you really going to make a scene like this in front of the neighbors? You are going to embarrass the family over some drywall." I did not flinch. "I am not making a scene. Dad, I am following the law. Something you and Mom seem to have forgotten how to do." "We raised you better than this," my father spat, his face flushing red. "So selfish. Always so cold." "If being cold means protecting what I earned, then yes," I said. "I am freezing. Now get out." I pulled my phone from my pocket and unlocked the screen, my thumb hovering over the keypad. I was bluffing about calling 911 immediately. I wanted to talk to my lawyer first, but they didn't need to know that. "Go ahead," Kendra said. Her voice was soft, melodic, and completely at odds with the tension in the room. She hadn't moved from her spot against the lumber. She was smiling again, that small, tight smile that she used when she knew a secret that could ruin you. "Call the police. Aurora," she continued, examining her manicure. "I think that is a great idea. In fact, I think you should ask for the dispatch supervisor." I paused. My thumb froze over the screen. "What are you talking about?" "Well," Kendra said, pushing herself off the wood and walking slowly toward me. She reached into her large tote bag, sitting on a pristine patch of floor, and pulled out a thick manila folder. "The police are going to ask for permits. You know how strict the zoning laws are in this neighborhood. You can't just convert a garage without the city signing off." "I know that," I said, eyeing the folder. "That is why this is illegal." "Is it?" Kendra asked. She tapped the folder with a long, manicured fingernail. "Because according to the city planning department, this is a fully permitted renovation, approved, stamped, and paid for." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "That is impossible. I never applied for a permit." "Oh, but you did," Kendra said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Or at least, the paperwork says you did. It has your name right at the top. Applicant Aurora Rivera. It has your signature at the bottom. It even has a copy of your driver's license attached to the application." The air left the room. My lungs refused to inflate. "You forged my signature," I whispered. "I helped you file the paperwork," Kendra corrected. her eyes gleaming with malice. "You were so busy in Chicago. Mom said you wouldn't mind if we got the ball rolling. And the city. They were so helpful. They didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with the signature. It looks exactly like the one on your birthday cards." She held the folder out to me, but pulled it back just as I reached for it. "So go ahead," she said. "Call the cops. Tell them there are intruders in your house, and when they get here, I will show them the valid building permit issued to the homeowner, authorizing this exact work. Who do you think they are going to believe, the hysterical woman shouting about trespassing, or the documented paperwork stamped by the city government?" I stood there, paralyzed. She had checkmated me in my own garage. If the police came now, it would be a civil dispute. They would see the permit, see the family relation, and tell us to take it to court. They wouldn't arrest anyone, and in the meantime, my house would remain a construction site. "You are insane," I said. "I am smart," Kendra replied. She turned to the contractors. "You guys can head out for today. My sister is having a bad day. We will pick this up tomorrow morning." Mike, the foreman, didn't wait to be told twice. He signaled his crew, and they began throwing tools into their buckets with frantic speed. They wanted no part of this toxicity. My parents walked past me with their heads held high. My mother stopped just long enough to shake her head at me. "You have a hard heart, Aurora. Someday you will realize family is all you have." They walked out into the driveway, the gravel crunching under their feet. Kendra lingered. She waited until the workers were loading the van and our parents were by her car. She walked up to me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, a sickly sweet vanilla scent that I had always hated. "You should really think before you try to kick me out again," she whispered, her voice low and sharp like a razor blade. "You are a respected consultant, right? Big clients, high ethics. Imagine what happens if the city finds out you filed for a permit and then claimed fraud just to evict your own pregnant sister. Oh wait, I'm not pregnant, but I could be, for the story." She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You aren't just losing a garage." "Aurora," she said, her eyes dead serious. "If you fight me on this, you are going to lose your reputation, and we both know that is the only thing you actually love." She turned and sauntered out the door, the gravel popping under her heels. I stood in the center of the ruin for a long time after the taillights disappeared. I walked to the wall panel and hit the button to close the garage door. The mechanism groaned, protesting against the dust in the tracks. Before finally sealing the space, I walked through the mudroom and into the kitchen. I locked the door, then I locked the deadbolt. Then I engaged the manual security latch. The house was silent. It was usually a silence I cherished, a silence that felt like peace. Tonight, it felt like a cage. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door and closed my eyes. They hadn't just broken into sleep here. They hadn't just wanted a free room. This wasn't about housing. This was a hostile takeover. Kendra had weaponized the bureaucracy against me. She had stolen my identity before she even stole my space. I pushed myself off the door. My hands were trembling, but not from fear anymore. The shock was burning off, leaving behind something cold and hard. They thought they had trapped me with a piece of paper. They thought using my name against me was a clever trick. They were about to find out that Aurora Rivera was not just a name on a permit. It was the name of the person who was going to bury them. I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets, staring at the smart lock I had just engaged manually. My hands were still shaking. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash that follows a confrontation. I needed a witness. I needed a fortress. I picked up my phone and dialed the only number that mattered in a crisis. Marissa Cole did not ask why I was calling at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. She did not ask about my trip to Chicago. She heard the tremor in my breath and simply said, "I am on my way." She arrived 19 minutes later. When I opened the door, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. She walked in, dropped her purse on the island, and wrapped her arms around me. It wasn't a soft hug. It was a brace, something to hold me upright when gravity felt like it was pulling too hard. "You are not alone in this," she said into my shoulder. "Now, tell me what we need to secure the perimeter." That was why I loved Marissa. She was an operations manager for a logistics firm, and she processed trauma the same way I did by organizing it. "I need a locksmith," I said, pulling away. "I need one who works nights and doesn't ask questions about why a grown woman is locking her parents out." We found a service that advertised emergency residential security. I told them money was no object, but speed was non-negotiable. An hour later, a van pulled up. The locksmith was a burly man with a tool belt that jingled like wind chimes. I had him rip out every single cylinder in the house: the front door, the back patio slider, the side gate, and especially the door connecting the kitchen to the garage. I didn't just want them rekeyed, I wanted them upgraded. We installed high-security deadbolts that required a code card to duplicate the keys. It cost me nearly $1,200 for a night's work, but as I watched him drill the new strike plates into the frame, I felt the first returning flicker of control. While the locksmith worked, I began the sweep. It felt insane to be doing this in my own home, the place where I drank coffee in my pajamas. But I moved through the rooms like I was clearing a hostile building. I checked every window on the ground floor. I found the guest room window unlatched. Had I left it that way? Or had Kendra unlocked it to create a secondary access point? The uncertainty made my skin crawl. I locked it and jammed a wooden dowel into the track so it couldn't slide open even if the lock was picked. I checked the vents. I checked the basement wells. I went into the attic and checked the roof access. It felt like minesweeping. Every shadow looked like a breach. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like footsteps. When the locksmith finished and left, the silence in the house was heavy. Marissa was in the kitchen, brewing a pot of strong coffee. "We are not done," she said, handing me a mug. "Locking them out is defense. Now we need offense. You need to document the scene." "I saw it," I said, rubbing my temples. "I don't want to look at it again." "You saw it with your eyes," Marissa corrected. "The court needs to see it with a lens. If they claim they were improving the property, we need proof they were butchering it. We need to document every scratch, every hole, every pile of trash." She was right. I grabbed my camera, a high-end DSLR I used for site visits, and we went into the garage. The air was still thick with dust. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, the damage looked even more violent. I didn't just take wide shots. I took close-ups. I photographed the jagged edges where the drywall had been hammered out, exposing the insulation. I photographed the trench cut into the concrete, measuring its depth and width with a tape measure Marissa held for scale. I took pictures of the paint cans they had left open, the stains on the floor, the pile of debris that included pieces of my custom shelving units. "Get the brand names on the materials," Marissa directed. "If they bought cheap piping, we can prove they were degrading the value of the home, not enhancing it." I snapped photos of the PVC pipes lying in the dirt. They were the cheapest grade available, the kind used for agricultural drainage, not residential plumbing. Kendra wasn't just stealing my space. She was installing future water damage into my foundation. After we finished in the garage, I retreated to my home office. I needed to build the file. I created a new digital folder on my encrypted drive and named it simply Evidence. I scanned my original purchase contract, highlighting the date of sale and the title clause. I downloaded my home insurance policy, flagging the section that voided coverage for unpermitted work. I found the emails from the original contractor who built the house, proving the high-grade materials we had used, to contrast with the garbage Kendra had brought in. "Aurora," Marissa called out from the living room. Her voice had that specific pitch that meant something was wrong. I walked out to find her standing by the kitchen island, holding a stack of mail. When I had come in earlier, I had been too focused on the noise to check the mail slot. "I was sorting through the pile," she said, holding up a white business envelope. "And I found this." It was an envelope from the City Planning and Development Department. It was addressed to me, Aurora Rivera, but the top edge had been slit open. I took the envelope with trembling fingers. It wasn't a jagged tear. It was a clean slice. done with a letter opener. Someone had taken this out of my mailbox, opened it, read it, and then put it back. I pulled out the letter. It was a standard notice of permit application received, dated 2 weeks ago. She didn't just forge my signature, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. She has been monitoring my mail. She knew the city would send a confirmation to the homeowner. She intercepted it so I wouldn't see it. That is a federal crime, Marissa said quietly. Tampering with mail. That is not a civil dispute anymore. Aurora, that is a felony. I looked at the postmark. It was dated 3 days after I left for Chicago. Kendra had been planning this the moment my flight took off. She had keys to my house. She had access to my mailbox. And she had the terrifying confidence that I would never check. She thought she could intercept the permit, get the work done, and then present it to me as a done deal when I returned. I put the letter into a plastic sheet protector and added it to the pile on the desk. This was the smoking gun. This was proof that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a family dispute. This was a calculated, premeditated operation to defraud me. That night, sleep was impossible. Marissa insisted on staying on the sofa, a blanket pulled up to her chin, keeping watch. I sat in the armchair across from her, listening to the house breathe. The AC system hummed. The refrigerator cycled on and off, and the wind rattled the window panes. Every sound made me jump. I kept imagining Kendra's key sliding into the lock. Even though I knew the cylinder was sitting in a trash can 5 miles away, I kept seeing that permit with my name on it. I kept hearing her laugh. Go to sleep, Aurora, Marissa whispered in the dark. I can't, I said. If I close my eyes, I feel like they are going to come back. They can't get in, she said. We secured the perimeter. You are safe. But I wasn't safe. Not really, because the enemy wasn't a burglar trying to steal a television. The enemy was my own blood, and she knew my social security number, my mother's maiden name, and exactly how to hurt me. I watched the digital clock on the microwave count down the minutes until sunrise. I formulated the plan in my head, refining it, sharpening it. I wouldn't act out of emotion. I wouldn't scream. I would execute. When the sun finally began to bleed gray light through the blinds, I stood up. My eyes burned, but my mind was crystal clear. What is the move? Marissa asked, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. We have a schedule, I said, walking to the coffee machine to start a fresh pot. 3 stops, in this specific order. Okay, she said. Lay it out. First, I call Evan Ramirez. I said, I need my lawyer to draft a cease and desist and prepare for a restraining order. I need the legal shield up before noon. Second, the police station. I said, I am filing a formal report for trespassing, property damage, and mail theft. I want a case number. I want it on the official record. And third, I looked at the plastic sheet protector holding the opened letter from the city. Third, I said, I am going to the city planning department. I am going to find the person who stamped that permit, and I am going to find out exactly who pretended to be me. I took a sip of the black coffee. It was bitter, just like the mood in the room. They wanted a renovation, I said. I am going to give them a demolition. Marissa nodded. Standing up to stand beside me, we watched the sun rise over the driveway where the white van had been parked. The driveway was empty now, but the tire tracks were still there, pressed into the mud. Let's go to work, she said. I grabbed my car keys and the folder marked evidence. The weekend of rest I had planned was gone. The war had begun. I sat in my car parked in a quiet corner of a strip mall lot. My phone connected to the Bluetooth system. The engine was idling, a low hum that usually soothed me. But today it felt like the countdown timer on a bomb. I stared at the dashboard clock. It was 8:15 in the morning. I dialed Evan Ramirez. Evan was the real estate attorney who had handled the closing on my house 2 years ago. He was expensive, meticulous, and possessed a voice that sounded like gravel crunching under tires. He picked up on the second ring. Aurora, he said, skipping the pleasantries. I saw your message about an emergency. Is the house okay? The house is still standing, but barely, I said. I took a deep breath and laid it out for him. I spoke quickly but clearly, stripping away the emotion and leaving only the facts. I told him about the white van, the demolished garage, the missing floor, the contractor named Mike, the permit with my forged signature, the intercepted mail, and finally, my sister's declaration that she was moving in. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. "Aurora," Evan said finally, his tone shifting from casual acquaintance to legal counsel. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. You are currently framing this in your head as a family dispute. I can hear it in your voice. You are using words like sister and parents and misunderstanding. You need to stop that immediately." "It is my family, Evan," I said, gripping the steering wheel. "No," Evan corrected me sharply. "In the eyes of the law, what you just described is not family drama. It is criminal trespassing. It is malicious destruction of property. It is forgery. And if that permit is real, it is identity fraud. You need to stop thinking like a sister and start thinking like a plaintiff." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Okay, what do I do?" "I need evidence," Evan said. "Did you document the damage?" "Yes," I said. "Marissa and I took photos last night, detailed ones, materials, damage to the structure, the open paint cans, everything. We also have the receipt for the locksmith and the new deadbolts." "Good," Evan said. "Upload all of that to the secure client portal I'm sending to your email right now. Do not delete anything from your phone, but get it onto my server immediately. Now, tell me about the contractor. Did you get a name?" "The foreman said his name was Mike," I replied. I didn't get a last name, but the van had a license plate I photographed, and he mentioned they took a deposit. "That is a problem," Evan said, his voice dropping. "If they took a deposit and started work, they have established a commercial presence on your property. This brings us to a risk you probably haven't thought of. It is called a mechanic's lien." "A what?" "A mechanic's lien," Evan repeated, enunciating every syllable. "In the construction world, if a contractor does work on a property and doesn't get paid the full amount, they can file a legal claim against the property itself. It clouds your title. It means you cannot sell, refinance, or sometimes even borrow against the house until the debt is paid, even though you didn't hire them. If they can prove they added value to the structure with the apparent consent of an occupant, they can try to stick you with the bill for the rest of the contract." My stomach turned over. "So I could end up paying for the destruction of my own house. If we are not aggressive," "Yes," Evan said. "We need to kill that contract immediately. I am going to draft a formal notice of non-responsibility and a demand to cease operations. You need to send this to the contractor via certified mail. If you can find an email address, send it there too. We need a paper trail proving that as soon as you discovered the work, you disavowed it. We need to state clearly that the person who hired them had no legal authority to do so." "I can do that," I said. "I have the photo of the van. Marissa is running the plates now to find the business entity." "Good," Evan said. "Now, step 2. You are going to the police station. Today, not tomorrow. You need to file a formal police report for trespassing and vandalism." "I am on my way there now," I said. "When you talk to the officer," Evan instructed, "do not let them dismiss this as a civil matter. That is their default setting for anything involving relatives. You have to emphasize the unauthorized entry and the damage. Show them the photos of the destroyed walls. Tell them about the locks being changed or the keys being stolen. You need a case number. Without a case number, the insurance company won't touch you, and the city won't take your fraud claims seriously." "Got it," I said. "Case number, non-negotiable." "Step 3, Evan continued, the rustling of papers audible in the background. "We are going to file for a protective order, depending on the judge. It might be a temporary restraining order or a no trespass order. We want to legally bar Kendra and your parents from coming within 100 yards of your home or your place of employment. My workplace, I asked. Is that necessary? Absolutely, Evan said. If they are desperate enough to demo your house while you are out of town, they are desperate enough to show up at your office and cause a scene to embarrass you into submission. We cut that off now. I looked out the window at the empty parking lot. The reality of what he was proposing was heavy. A restraining order against my mother and father. It felt nuclear. They are going to hate me, I whispered. They already disrespect you, Evan said, his voice hard. Aurora, listen to me. This is the most important part. From this moment forward, you do not speak to them. You do not answer their calls. You do not reply to their texts. You do not open the door if they bang on it. All communication goes through my office. If they text you begging, you forward it to me. If they threaten you, you forward it to me. If they show up, you call the police and show them the protective order. Why? I asked. Why can't I just tell them to stop? Because they will use your emotions as a weapon. Evan said, They know your buttons, Aurora. They installed them. If you engage, you will get angry, or you will get sad, and you might say something that implies you are willing to negotiate. Just pay me back and we are good is a sentence that can ruin your legal standing. We are not negotiating. We are prosecuting. I thought about Kendra's face in the garage, the way she smiled when she mentioned the permit. She knew I would hesitate. She counted on me being the big sister who fixed things, not the stranger who filed lawsuits. She had weaponized my own history against me. You are right, I said, my voice firming up. Kendra is counting on me being soft. Then show her you are concrete, Evan said. One last thing. Aurora, and this is the one that might send someone to prison. The permit, I guessed. Exactly, Evan said. If that permit actually exists in the city database, and if it actually has your signature on it, that is not just a building code violation. That is identity fraud. That is forgery of a government document. In this state, that is a felony. When we go to the city today, we are not just asking to cancel a construction project. We are initiating a fraud investigation. Are you prepared for that? Because once that ball starts rolling, you cannot stop it just because your mother starts crying. I closed my eyes. I saw the envelope Marissa had found, the one that had been sliced open. I saw the violation of my privacy, the arrogance of their assumption that I would just absorb the cost and the chaos because we shared a last name. I am prepared, I said. Good, Evan said. I will have the paperwork ready for you to sign by 2 in the afternoon. Go to the police, go to the city, and for God's sake, keep your doors locked. The line went dead. I lowered the phone and stared at the steering wheel. The morning sun was cutting through the windshield, illuminating the dust particles floating in the cabin. The vagueness was gone. The confusion was gone. I had a checklist. I had a strategy. And for the first time since I saw the white van in my driveway, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a weapon that had just been loaded. I put the car in drive and pulled out of the lot, heading toward the police station. The fluorescent lights of the police precinct hummed with a low, irritating buzz that seemed designed to make everyone in the room anxious. I sat on a hard wooden bench, my spine pressed against the backrest, clutching the folder marked evidence against my chest. The air smelled of stale coffee and industrial floor wax. It was 10:30 in the morning, when my name was finally called. I walked to the desk of Detective Miller, a man with tired eyes and a hairline that was retreating in defeat. He gestured for me to sit, looking at the intake form I had filled out. Trespassing and vandalism, Miller said, reading from the sheet. He looked up, his expression neutral. And the suspect is your sister and your parents. That is correct, I said, keeping my voice steady. Miller sighed, dropping the paper onto his desk. He rubbed his face with one hand. Look, Ms. Rivera, we get a lot of these. Family disputes over property lines, arguments about who promised who the guest room. Usually, we tell folks to handle this in civil court. If your sister has a key. She does not have a key, I cut in. She stole a key. And she didn't just sleep in the guest room. She hired a demolition crew to destroy a significant portion of my home without my knowledge or consent. I opened the folder. I didn't let him dismiss me. I laid out the photographs Marissa and I had taken the night before. I placed them on his desk one by one, like tarot cards predicting a disaster. The first photo showed the jagged, smashed drywall. The second showed the trench cut into the concrete foundation. The third showed the pile of insulation and debris that used to be my garage. Miller stopped rubbing his face. He picked up the photo of the trench. They did this. They did that, I confirmed. And here is the receipt from the locksmith who had to drill out every cylinder in my house last night because my security was compromised. And here's the name and license plate of the contractor who claimed he was hired by a woman posing as the owner. I paused, then played my strongest card. But the vandalism is secondary, I said. My sister, Kendra Vale, claimed to be in possession of a building permit issued by the city. She claimed it was signed by me. I never signed it. I never applied for it. If that document exists, Detective, it was obtained through identity theft and forgery. Miller looked at me for a long moment. The boredom was gone from his eyes, replaced by the sharp, assessing look of a cop who realizes a crime has actually been committed. The family drama filter had been deactivated. Forgery of a government document takes this out of civil court, Miller said quietly. He pulled a fresh case file from his drawer. Okay, let's start from the beginning. I need dates, times, and exactly what was said. I spent the next 40 minutes giving a statement. I was precise. I did not cry. I did not speculate on why they hated me. I gave him facts. When I left the station with a small white card bearing a case number, I didn't feel relief. I felt the cold, heavy weight of a machine starting to turn. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, I was sitting in the conference room of Evan Ramirez's law office. The table was made of mahogany, polished to a mirror shine, contrasting sharply with the mess of my life spread out across it. Marissa was sitting to my left, scrolling through property records on her tablet. Evan was across from me, reviewing the restraining order application I had just signed. This is solid, Evan said, tapping the paper with his pen. With the police report number you just gave me, a judge will likely grant the temporary order by tomorrow morning. It establishes an immediate threat to your property. Then, my phone buzzed against the mahogany table. The screen lit up. The name Kendra flashed in bright white letters. Evan looked at the phone, then at me. Do not answer it unless you are ready to record it. Put it on speaker, Marissa said, her voice tight. We need to hear what she says. If she admits to the forgery, we have her. I took a deep breath and tapped the speaker icon. I answered, but I didn't say hello. I just let the line open. What the hell did you do? Kendra's voice screamed out of the tiny speaker, so loud it distorted, behind her voice. There was chaos. I could hear a dog barking. I could hear my mother sobbing, a high, thin wail that sounded like a siren. I could hear my father shouting something unintelligible, his voice booming with that familiar, terrifying rage. And underneath it all, the crackle of a police radio. There is a squad car in the driveway. Aurora, Kendra shrieked. A literal police car. Officer Davis is standing on the porch, asking Mom for her ID. The neighbors are all out on their lawns watching Mrs. Gable is filming us with her phone. I looked at Evan. He nodded slightly, his face impassive. You called the cops on your own parents, Kendra yelled. Are you insane? Mom is hyperventilating. Dad is about to have a stroke. How could you do this? I stared at the phone. For 37 years, I had been trained to fix this. When Kendra crashed her car, I paid for it. When Mom overspent on credit cards, I handled the balance transfer. My role in this family was to be the sponge that absorbed the mess. But the sponge was full. That is a natural consequence, I said. My voice was calm, almost robotic. A consequence. Kendra sounded choked. This isn't a consequence. This is war. You are ruining my life. I told my friends about the studio. I told Troy he could move his equipment in next week. Do you know how humiliating this is? Ma'am, I need you to step back, a deep male voice said in the background on Kendra's end. That had to be the police officer. Don't touch me, my father's voice roared in the distance. This is my daughter's house. I have rights. Sir, if you don't lower your voice, I will place you in cuffs for disorderly conduct. The officer's voice cut through the noise, sharp and authoritative. Did you hear that? Kendra screamed at me. They threatened to cuff Dad because of you, you evil, selfish bitch. You are airing our dirty laundry to the whole world. I didn't air the laundry, I said, leaning closer to the phone. I just reported the break-in. It wasn't a break-in, she screamed. We are family. Tell that to the officer, I said. You are dead to us. My mother's voice came through, distant but clear, piercing through her sobbing. Don't you ever come back here, you ungrateful child. Evan made a cutting motion across his throat. He wanted me to end the call. We had heard enough. They weren't apologizing. They weren't scared of the law. They were only scared of the embarrassment. They were angry that the victim had finally decided to hit back. Goodbye, Kendra, I said. I tapped the red button. The screaming cut off instantly. The silence that rushed back into the conference room was ringing in my ears. Marissa let out a breath she had been holding. Wow. They are digging their own grave, Evan said, making a note on his legal pad. The police are there now because they contacted the contractor. The contractor likely gave them your parents' address as the billing contact. The police are just doing their due diligence. But your family is reacting like they are being raided by the SWAT team. That is good for us. It shows they are volatile. I looked at my hands. They were trembling slightly. It wasn't regret. It was the adrenaline of severing a limb. I had just cut the cord that had tethered me to their dysfunction for my entire life. They called me evil, I whispered. They called you a complication, Marissa corrected, because you stopped being a resource. We have the police report, Evan said, bringing us back to the strategy. We have the audio of them admitting they are at the scene and hostile. Now, we need the final nail. The permit, I said. Exactly, Evan said. Kendra mentioned it again on the call. She didn't deny it exists. She just screamed about the consequences. We need to see that document. I stood up, smoothing the wrinkles in my skirt. The city planning department closes at 5 o'clock. If I leave now, I can get there in 20 minutes. Go, Evan said. If that permit has your signature, get a certified copy. Do not leave that building without a copy. Once we have that, we aren't just looking at a restraining order. We are looking at criminal charges. I walked out of the law office and into the blinding afternoon sun. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I didn't look at it. I knew who it was. The notifications were piling up texts, voicemails, probably angry emojis. I blocked it all out. I got into my car and set the GPS for the municipal building. The family drama was over. The investigation had begun. I wasn't driving to argue with my sister anymore. I was driving to find out exactly who had stolen my name. The Department of Building and Safety smelled like stale toner and aggressive bureaucracy. I stood at counter number 4, tapping my fingernails against the cool laminate surface while a clerk named Brenda typed slowly into a computer that looked like it belonged in a museum. It was 4:20 in the afternoon. I had made it with 40 minutes to spare before closing. Here it is, Brenda said, adjusting her glasses. Permit number B26940. Conversion of existing garage to accessory dwelling unit. Status is issued and active. Hearing the words spoken aloud made my stomach turn over. It was one thing for Kendra to shout about a permit in my driveway. It was another to have a city official confirm it existed in the database. I need to see the file, I said, keeping my voice level. I am the homeowner, and I never applied for this. Brenda looked up, her eyebrows raised. She didn't argue. She turned her monitor toward me and clicked open a scanned PDF. There it was, the application form. At the top, in block letters, was my name, Aurora Rivera, my address, my phone number. But when my eyes drifted to the email address field, I felt a cold prickle of recognition. My actual email address ended in riveraconsulting@gmail.com. The email on the form ended in riveraconsultings@gmail.com. An extra S. It was subtle enough that a tired clerk wouldn't notice, but distinct enough that any confirmation emails would go straight to a ghost account I couldn't access. "Scroll down," I said. "Please." Brenda scrolled to the signature block. I leaned in, squinting at the screen. The signature read, Aurora Rivera, but the loops were wrong. The R was too sharp. The tail of the A trailed off in a jittery, hesitant line, like someone was trying to draw the signature rather than write it. It was a tracing. A good one, but definitely a tracing. "That is not my signature," I whispered. "Well, they submitted ID with the application," Brenda said defensively, clicking another tab. "We require a government-issued ID for all owner-builder permits." The screen refreshed, displaying a scanned image of a driver's license. My driver's license. I stared at the image, and suddenly the room felt very small. It wasn't my current license, it was my old one, the one that had expired last year. But what froze my blood was the specific quality of the image. There was a glare across the forehead, a white flare from a flash. I remembered that glare. 3 years ago, during the chaotic week before I closed on the house, my scanner had jammed. I needed to send a copy of my ID to the title company immediately. I was at work, stuck in a meeting, so I had texted a photo of my license to my mother. I asked her to print it out and put it in the physical file she was holding for me until the move was complete. "That is a photo I sent my mother," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and grief. "She kept the file. She used an old photo of my ID to impersonate me." Brenda pulled the monitor back. Her demeanor shifted instantly from bored bureaucrat to cautious official. "Ma'am, if you are alleging that this application is fraudulent, we have a problem." "We certainly do," I said. "I want to file a formal contestation of this permit immediately. I want it flagged for fraud, and I want a stop work order issued on record." Brenda handed me a form titled Affidavit of Forgery. As I filled it out, my pen digging into the paper, she gave me the bad news. "I can flag it," she said, "but because the permit was issued, we have to send an inspector out to verify the site conditions. If work has already begun, which the log says it has, and we revoke the permit, you are going to be cited for unpermitted construction. You will have 30 days to either legalize the work or demolish it and restore the garage to its original state." "I am the victim here," I argued. "The city regulates buildings, not families," Brenda said, stamping my form with a heavy thud. "An inspector will be there tomorrow morning between 8 and 12. If the structure is compromised, you are looking at potential fines starting at $500 a day if it isn't rectified." I walked out of the building with a copy of the fraudulent application in my hand. The sun was setting, casting long, angry shadows across the parking lot. I got into my car and called Evan. "They used my old ID," I told him, skipping the hello, "the one Mom was supposed to be guarding, and they created a fake email account to intercept the city's notifications." "That is distinct intent," Evan said. His voice was sharp, energized. "That proves it wasn't a misunderstanding. They went to great lengths to hide this from you. Listen, Aurora, the strategy has to shift. We aren't just attacking them anymore. We are defending you from the city." "The clerk said I could be fined," I said, starting the car. "Exactly," Evan replied. "If the inspector sees a demolished garage and no valid permit, you are the one on the deed. You are liable. We need to frame this perfectly. When that inspector comes tomorrow, you are not a homeowner with a remodeling dispute. You are the victim of a crime scene. You show him the police report number before you show him the garage. We need the city to view the damage as vandalism, not construction. If they see it as vandalism, they give you time to repair it. If they see it as illegal construction, they fine you." "I understand," I said. "Victim, not violator." "Get home," Evan said. "Marissa found something else while you were gone." I drove home, my mind racing. The betrayal was deepening. It wasn't just that they wanted the room, it was the calculation. They had sat down, discussed the fact that I would say no, and then engineered a way to bypass my consent using the very documents I had trusted them to protect. When I walked into the kitchen, Marissa was sitting at the island with her laptop open. The house was quiet, the new locks engaging with a reassuring, heavy click behind me. "You look like you saw a ghost," Marissa said, looking up. "I saw a forgery," I said, tossing the certified copy of the permit onto the counter. "What did you find?" Marissa turned her laptop around. "I was digging into the contractor, Mike's General Construction. I found their business portal online. They use a standard platform for tracking jobs. And, Marissa said, pointing to a line item on the screen. According to their log, they sent a preliminary notice to the property owner 20 days ago. It is a standard legal requirement to protect their lien rights. I never got a notice," I said. "Exactly," Marissa said. "It was sent via certified mail, but the tracking shows it was signed for." She clicked a link. A digital image of a signature appeared. It was a scribble. "That arrived 2 days before you came home," Marissa said. "Kendra or your parents must have been watching the mailbox like hawks. They intercepted the city letter, and they intercepted the contractor's legal notice. They made sure you stayed blind and deaf until the walls were already down." I stared at the screen. The pieces were locking together into a terrifying picture. They weren't just trying to squat, I realized, feeling a coldness spread through my chest. This was a trap. They knew if they got the demolition done, I would be stuck. If I kicked them out, I would have a destroyed garage and city fines. They thought they could back me into a corner where letting them stay was cheaper and easier than fighting them. "It is a hostage situation," Marissa said. "But the hostage is your house." "They wanted me to be afraid of the bureaucracy," I said, looking at the affidavit of forgery I had just signed. "They counted on me being the responsible one, the one who cleans up the mess to avoid trouble." I picked up the forged permit application again. I looked at the fake email address. I looked at the stolen identity. "They miscalculated," I said quietly. "They thought the red tape would bind me. They didn't realize I know how to use it to strangle them." "Inspector comes tomorrow," Marissa asked. 8 a.m., I said, "and I am going to show him exactly who the criminals are." The city inspector had left just before 9 in the morning, leaving behind a yellow citation taped to the garage door and a grim warning about unpermitted structural alterations. The house felt violated, a crime scene wrapped in silence. I was in my home office, trying to salvage a presentation for a client in Denver, when my laptop pinged with a notification. It was an email to my corporate address at North Glass Strategy Group. The subject line read, "Deposit and key handoff, 1402 Oak Street." My stomach dropped. That was my address. I opened the email. It was from a man named Troy Sullivan. The message was brief and confused. "Hi, Aurora. I hope you don't mind me reaching out to you directly. I have been trying to reach your property manager, Kendra, for 2 days regarding the garage studio apartment. I paid the first month's rent and the security deposit in cash as requested, but I haven't received the move-in details. I'm supposed to pick up the keys on the 1st of the month. Please let me know if we are still on schedule." I stared at the screen, reading the words twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Property manager. Studio apartment. Cash deposit. "Marissa," I yelled. My voice echoed through the hallway. Marissa ran in from the living room, looking ready for a physical fight. "What are they here?" "Worse," I said, turning the laptop toward her. "Look at this." Marissa read the email, her eyes widening. "She isn't moving in," she whispered. "She is renting it out." "She is subletting a room that doesn't exist," I said, the rage turning into a cold, hard knot in my chest. "She told Mom and Dad she needed a place to stay because she was struggling, but she told this guy Troy that she is the property manager. She took his money. She is turning my garage into an income stream. That is why she needed the separate entrance," Marissa realized. That is why she wanted the plumbing for a kitchenette. She wasn't building a bedroom for herself. She was building an Airbnb unit inside your house. Dig, I ordered, grabbing my phone. Check her socials. Check everything. If she is taking deposits, she is advertising somewhere. While Marissa opened her laptop, I forwarded Troy's email to Evan Ramirez. I added a note. New development. Kendra is collecting rent on my property. Possible fraud against third parties. Evan replied 3 minutes later. Do not reply to Troy yet. This changes the intent from necessity to profit. It proves malice. It proves this was a business scheme. Not a family crisis. Save everything. Got it, Marissa said from across the desk. She spun her laptop around. On the screen was a cached version of a Facebook Marketplace listing, now deleted but recovered by the browser history. The title read, Luxury Studio in Quiet Neighborhood, Private Entrance, All Utilities Included. The price was listed as $1,500 a month, but it was the photos that made my blood boil. One was a shot of my backyard, carefully cropped to hide the main house. Another was a digital rendering of what the garage was supposed to look like, modern, chic, fully furnished. And look at this, Marissa said. Switching tabs to Instagram, Kendra had posted a story highlight titled New Projects. There was a photo of her standing in my driveway 2 weeks ago, holding a tape measure. The caption read, Expanding the portfolio, transforming dead space into cash flow, girl boss, real estate passive income. She blocked me from seeing these, I said, looking at the date. She posted this while I was in Chicago. She isn't just a squatter, Aurora, Marissa said, her voice disgusted. She is a scammer. She is selling access to your life. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was Kendra. I didn't answer. I watched the screen go dark, then light up again with a text message. Phase 1, the victim, Kendra Aurora. Please pick up. Mom is a mess. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just needed the money. I owe people. Please, can we just talk without the lawyers? I will fix the wall. Just drop the police report. I didn't reply. I remembered Evan's rule. No engagement. A minute passed. Then another text. The tone shifted violently. Phase 2. The threat. Kendra, fine. Ignore me. But remember, I know where you work. North Glass hates scandals. Right. Imagine what your boss will think when I tell him his star consultant committed permit fraud. I have the paper with your name on it. If I go down, I am taking your reputation with me. I stared at the message. It was a clumsy threat, desperate and vicious. She was trying to leverage the very crime she committed, the forged permit, to blackmail me into silence. She thought that because my name was on the application, I would be too terrified of a corporate investigation to fight back. She underestimated how I operated. In my world, you didn't hide from risk. You mitigated it. She is going to call North Glass, I said, showing the text to Marissa. She is going to try to blow up my career to make me back off. She wouldn't, Marissa said, reading the screen. That is mutually assured destruction. She is desperate, I said. She took cash from Troy. She spent money on the contractor. She is in a hole, and she thinks I am the only ladder out. If I don't help her, she will try to burn the house down. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I wasn't going to wait for her to make the call. Where are you going? Marissa asked. I am making a call, I said, to HR. I dialed the number for the North Glass Human Resources Department. I didn't ask for a low-level rep. I asked for the Director of Personnel Security, a woman I had worked with on a sensitive merger last year. Aurora? Sarah's voice was warm but professional. Everything okay? You are supposed to be on post-project leave. I am. Sarah, I said, keeping my voice steady and factual. But I need to flag a potential security issue regarding my personal information. I wanted to get ahead of it before it reached the firm. Go ahead, Sarah said. I could hear the shift in her tone, the sound of a pen clicking. I am currently the victim of a significant identity theft and fraud case, I explained. A family member has forged my signature on government documents and is currently under investigation by the police and the city planning department. I have a case number and a lawyer retained. I am so sorry to hear that, Sarah said. How does this impact the firm? The individual in question is attempting to use my employment at Northglass as leverage, I said. She has threatened to contact the firm with false allegations regarding these forged documents to damage my professional standing. I wanted to place a formal note in my file that any communication regarding my legal status or permit fraud is part of this ongoing extortion attempt. I am happy to provide the police report and the affidavit of forgery I filed with the city this morning. Absolutely, Sarah said firmly. Send me the case number. I will flag your file immediately. If she calls, she will be directed to legal, and we will record the interaction as harassment. We protect our people, Aurora, especially from this kind of thing. Thank you, Sarah, I said. I appreciate the shield. I hung up and looked at Marissa. My hands were steady. Done, Marissa asked. Done, I said. She thinks my job is my weakness. She forgot that my job is literally managing crises. I just immunized myself. I looked back at the email from Troy. I felt a pang of pity for him. He was another victim in Kendra's game, another person she had used to fund her delusions of grandeur. What about Troy? Marissa asked. Forward his email to the detective, I said. Then we wait. Kendra just threatened a federal witness in a fraud investigation. She doesn't know it yet, but she just handed Evan the weapon he needs to bury her. I walked to the window and looked out at the driveway. The white van was gone, but the stain of their presence remained. Kendra wanted to turn my home into a business. She wanted to monetize my sanctuary. She had demanded a new chapter. She was about to get one, but it wasn't going to be about passive income. It was going to be about criminal defense fees. The phone call that shifted the ground beneath my feet came at 10:30 on Wednesday morning. I was in my home office, organizing the digital paper trail for the city inspector, when an unknown number flashed on my screen. I usually let unknown numbers go to voicemail, but my instinct told me to answer. Ms. Rivera. The voice was rough, male, and sounded like it was coming from inside a tin can. It was Mike, the contractor. Look, I got a certified letter from a lawyer named Ramirez this morning. It says I am being named in a fraud investigation, lady. I run a clean business. I can't have this on my license. Then you need to talk to us, I said, leaning back in my chair. My lawyer is ready to listen. If you are innocent, prove it. But if you keep hiding, we are going to assume you were part of the scam. I am not part of anything, Mike shouted, his voice cracking. I am stuck in the middle. Your sister is blowing up my phone, screaming at me to finish the job, and you are threatening to sue me for starting it. I just want to get paid for the materials and walk away. Meet us, I said. 2:00, Mr. Ramirez's office. Bring everything, every text, every email, every receipt. If you are honest with us, we might leave you out of the lawsuit. Mike hesitated for a second, the silence heavy with calculation. I will be there. At 2:00 sharp, Mike walked into Evan's conference room. He looked smaller without his tool belt, wearing a clean plaid shirt that was buttoned wrong at the cuffs. He looked like a man who had realized he had walked into a bear trap. Evan didn't offer him coffee. He pointed to a chair and turned on a digital recorder. State your name for the record. Mike Henderson, the contractor said, owner of Henderson General Construction. Mike, Evan said, his voice smooth and dangerous. My client alleges that you destroyed her property without her consent. You claim you had a contract. Who exactly gave you the work order? Mike reached into a battered leather satchel and pulled out a stack of papers. He slid a contract across the table. Kendra Vale. She said she was the property manager. She did all the talking. She told me exactly where to cut the trench, where the kitchenette needed to go. She was very specific about the timeline, said it had to be done in 10 days. And the permit? Evan asked. They gave it to me on the first day, Mike said. Hard copy, stamped by the city. It looked real. I had no reason to doubt it. You said they? I interrupted. Who is they? Mike shifted in his seat. The younger woman, Kendra, and the older one, the mom, Mrs. Vale. I felt a cold hand squeeze my heart. My mother was there. Yeah, Mike said. She was the one who actually handed me the permit folder. She told me, "Don't worry about the noise. My daughter is out of town and she wants this done as a surprise." She was real nice, brought cookies for the crew. I looked down at the table, fighting the urge to be sick. My mother hadn't just stood by. She had actively facilitated the deception. She had handed over the forged documents with a smile and cookies, knowing they were tearing my house apart while I was working in Chicago. "Okay," Evan said, keeping the momentum going. "Let's talk about money. You said you took a deposit. How was that paid cash personal check?" "No," Mike said. "They wired it. Said it was faster." "Who wired it?" Evan asked. "Kendra Vale." "No," Mike said, digging through his stack of papers again. "It came from a business account. I remember thinking it was weird for a residential job, but the check cleared, so I didn't ask questions." He found the transaction record and pushed it toward us. Evan picked it up, his eyes scanning the lines. He stopped, and a frown creased his forehead. "KVR Management, LLC," Evan read aloud. "Amount $4,500. What is KVR Management?" I asked. "I don't know." Mike shrugged. "That is the name on the bank transfer." Evan looked at me. "LLCs are public record. If they formed a company to pay for this, that suggests this wasn't just a desperate scramble for housing. This was a premeditated business venture." Evan dismissed Mike 20 minutes later. After getting a sworn affidavit that he had never met me and that my mother and sister were the sole points of contact, as soon as the door clicked shut, Marissa pulled out her laptop. "I am checking the Secretary of State's business registry," she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "KVR Management. Here it is." "When was it formed?" I asked. "Filed 3 weeks ago," Marissa said. "Just before you left for Chicago." "Who is the registered agent?" "Kendra Vale," Marissa read. "But look at the members listed. Kendra Vale and Maria Rivera." "My mother." "And check the registered address," Evan commanded. Marissa clicked the link. "Unit 4B, Oakwood Apartments." "That is my parents' condo," I whispered. The silence in the room was absolute. The picture had shifted from a sister who was bad with money to a coordinated family enterprise. They hadn't just conspired to steal a room. They had incorporated a shell company to manage the asset. They had planned to funnel the rent from my garage into this LLC, effectively laundering the money through a legitimate business structure. My father, who always talked about family loyalty, was likely the silent partner letting them use his address. "They aren't just enablers, Aurora," Evan said, his voice void of any pity. "They are co-conspirators. They built a corporate veil to hide behind while they stripped your equity. This was an organized attempt to monetize your property." I walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline. I felt numb. The betrayal was so complete, it was almost impressive. "Does this help us?" I asked, turning back to Evan. "Immensely," Evan said. "It proves the mechanic's lien is invalid because the contract was with a fraudulent entity, not the homeowner, and it gives us leverage. If we expose this LLC to the fraud investigation, your mother isn't just a sad old lady caught in the middle. She is an officer of a company engaged in criminal activity." "Do it," I said. "Add it to the file." The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. The city inspector was scheduled for 8 in the morning on Thursday. We had to build a narrative that protected me from the fines. Evan prepared a binder that was 2 inches thick. It contained the police report, the affidavit of forgery, the cease and desist letter to the contractor, and now, the printout of the KVR management registration. "We have to show the inspector that you are the primary victim." Evan coached me over the phone that night. You didn't neglect your property. You were targeted by a sophisticated fraud scheme. The moment you discovered the damage, you stopped it. That is your shield. I spent the evening pacing my living room, the house feeling too big and too quiet. Marissa had gone home to shower, promising to be back before dawn. I checked the locks for the 10th time. I checked the windows. Then, my phone buzzed with an alert from the new security camera system I had installed yesterday. Motion detected front driveway. I froze. I pulled up the app. The feed was grainy. Black and white night vision. A car was idling at the curb, just outside the range of the street lamp. It wasn't a police car. It was a dark sedan. A figure was standing at the end of my driveway, just staring at the house. They were wearing a hooded sweatshirt, hands deep in their pockets. They didn't walk up the path. They didn't try the door. They just stood there, immobile, like a statue placed there to remind me that I was being watched. I zoomed in on the screen. I couldn't see the face, but I recognized the posture, the slouch, the way the weight shifted from one foot to the other. It was Kendra. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't banging on the door. She was just standing there, in the dark, looking at the house she had tried to steal. It was more terrifying than any threat she had texted. It was a silent promise that she wasn't done. I watched her on the screen for 5 minutes. Then, the car lights flashed. She turned, got into the passenger seat, and the car drove away. She hadn't driven herself. Someone else was driving. My father. My mother. I saved the video clip and named it Intimidation. I sent it to Evan. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, watching the camera feed, waiting for the sun to come up so I could face the inspector. They thought they could scare me into dropping the case. They thought showing up in the dark would make me crumble. But as I watched the empty driveway, I realized something. They were the ones standing outside in the cold. I was the one inside the fortress, and tomorrow, I was going to pull the drawbridge up and leave them out there forever. Thursday morning began with a phone call that felt like a surrender, but smelled like an ambush. I was sitting in Evan Ramirez's conference room, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee, when he put his cell phone on the table and tapped the speaker button. "That was the attorney representing your parents and sister," Evan said, his voice devoid of emotion. "He is a general practice lawyer from the suburbs. He specializes in estate planning, not criminal defense. He sounds terrified." "What did he offer?" I asked. "He called it an internal settlement," Evan said, leaning back in his leather chair. "Their proposal is this: Kendra agrees to move her belongings out of the garage, which, by the way, are just a few boxes of tile samples. In exchange, you agree to drop the police report, withdraw the fraud complaint with the city, and sign a non-disclosure agreement stating that the renovation was a miscommunication regarding scope." "They want me to lie," I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "They want me to tell the city that I authorized the work, but we just disagreed on the design." "It gets better," Evan added, a dark amusement in his eyes. "They want you to pay the contractor's outstanding balance of $3,000 for the demolition work. To preserve the family credit rating, they are framing this as a favor to you, Aurora. They are offering to forgive you for embarrassing them." "Reject it," I said instantly. "Tell him I will see them in court." "I already did," Evan replied. "But this tells us something important. They are panicked. They know the fraud investigation is real, and when people panic, they try to find shortcuts, as if on cue." My phone buzzed. It was an email from Kendra. The subject line was simply, "I'm sorry." I opened it, Marissa leaning over my shoulder to read. The text was long, rambling, and dripping with a performance of humility that made my skin crawl. "Aurora," it began. "I have been thinking all night. I know I messed up. I shouldn't have started without talking to you face to face. I just wanted to surprise you. I know you've been so stressed with work, and I thought if I just handled the project, you would be happy to see the upgrade. I am sorry I didn't ask. I am a mess right now. Mom is crying nonstop. Please, can we just fix this? I have the money to pay the fines. I will take care of everything. I just need you to sign the notice of completion form attached to this email. Once you sign that, the city closes the active permit, and I can pay the fees under my name. Please, Sissy, let me make this right. I stared at the screen. She called me Sissy. She hasn't used that name since we were 12. Look at the attachment, Evan said sharply. Do not open it. Just look at the file name. It was a standard city form, owner-builder notice of completion. If you sign that, Evan said, his voice dropping to a warning growl, you are legally attesting that the work was done under your supervision and to your satisfaction. You are retroactively validating the forged permit. You would be admitting that you were the applicant. The moment your ink hits that paper, the fraud case vanishes, and you become liable for every code violation they found. She is trying to trick me into confessing, I whispered. She isn't sorry. She is trying to get me to legally adopt her crime. It is a trap, Marissa said, disgusted. Sweet as honey, toxic as arsenic. And here comes the guilt, I said. Pointing to my notifications, my mother had started texting. The messages popped up one after another, like a relentless drumbeat. You are destroying your father. Is a garage worth your sister's future? We raised you to be generous. Where did we go wrong? You are killing this family over drywall. Notice what is missing, I asked, showing the screen to Evan. Not once do they say, we were wrong. Not once do they say, we shouldn't have forged your name. They are only mad about the punishment, not the sin. Ignore them, Evan commanded. We have a date with the inspector. We met the city inspector at my house at 11 o'clock. His name was Mr. Henderson, a man who looked like he had seen every possible way a homeowner could ruin a house. He walked through the garage, taking notes on a clipboard, shaking his head at the slashed concrete and the exposed wiring. I handed him the binder Evan had prepared. It was heavy. Mr. Henderson, I said, keeping my voice steady. This binder contains the police report for trespassing, the affidavit of forgery regarding the permit application, and the correspondence from my lawyer to the contractor demanding they cease operations. As you can see from the timeline, I was in Chicago when this application was submitted. Henderson flipped through the pages. He paused at the copy of the permit application with the shaky signature. I have seen a lot of trace signatures in my time, Henderson muttered. This one is pretty bad. He looked up at me, his expression sympathetic but firm. Look, Ms. Rivera, I believe you. This looks like a classic case of family fraud. But here's the problem. I am a building inspector, not a forensic analyst. I can flag this permit as disputed, and I can issue a stop work order. But unless you can prove exactly who submitted this video footage of them handing it over, or a confession, the city's default position is to hold the property owner responsible for the condition of the property. I have to cite you for the illegal demolition. You have 30 days to get a demolition permit to legalize what was done, or a building permit to fix it. So I am being fined for the crime committed against me, I said. Until a judge says otherwise, you are just the owner of a non-compliant structure, Henderson said, handing me a pink slip. I am sorry, as Henderson drove away. I stood in the driveway, holding the citation. I felt a surge of helplessness. They had created a mess so deep that even the truth wasn't enough to clean it up instantly. We need a smoking gun, Marissa said, pacing the driveway. The contractor said your mom handed him the papers, but he didn't see who signed them. The clerk saw the ID but didn't verify the person. We need Kendra to say it. We need her to say, I signed your name. She won't, I said. She is too slippery. She just sent me that email trying to get me to sign. Wait, Marissa stopped pacing. Remember in the garage? The first day when you threatened to call the police? What exactly did she say? I closed my eyes, replaying the memory, the dust, the noise, Kendra's smirk. She said, go ahead. Call the police. The permit is in your name. She knew it was in your name because she put it there, Marissa said. But in her email today, she claimed she just wanted to surprise you and implied she handled it all. There is a contradiction if she handled it all as a surprise. Why did she use your name instead of acting as an agent? We need her to slip up, Evan said, stepping out of his car where he had been waiting. In this state, you can record a conversation if there is no expectation of privacy, or if you are gathering evidence of a serious crime like extortion or fraud. Given the threats she made against your employment, we have leeway, but we need to be careful. I can call her, I said. I can sound defeated. If she thinks I am breaking, she might brag. She always brags when she thinks she has won. Do it, Evan said. Put it on speaker. Marissa, record it on your backup device just in case. I sat on the front steps of my house. The pink citation crumpled in my hand. I took a deep breath. Channeling every ounce of exhaustion I had felt over the last week, I dialed Kendra. She answered on the first ring. So you finally came to your senses, she said. Her voice wasn't apologetic anymore. The I'm sorry persona had vanished the moment she thought I was complying. I got the citation. Kendra, I said, letting my voice crack. $500. And the inspector said I have to fix the wall in 30 days, or they put a lien on the house. See, Kendra said, her tone dripping with vindication. I told you that you were making a mess. If you had just let me finish, none of this would be happening. I would be living there, paying rent to the LLC, and you would be happy. I don't know what to do, I lied. The email you sent if I sign that paper, will you really pay the fines? Yes, Kendra said, eager now. I promise. I have the money ready. Just sign the completion notice, send it back to me, and I will walk it down to the city myself. I will tell them it was all a big misunderstanding and pay the fees. It will all go away. Aurora, we can be sisters again. But the signature, I pressed, trying to sound scared. The one on the application, it looks so much like mine. Did Mom do it? Mom? Kendra laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. Mom was shaking like a leaf. She couldn't even hold the pen. No, Aurora, I did it. I practiced your signature for 3 hours on the back of a pizza box until I got the loop on the R perfect. It is identical. That is why the clerk didn't even blink. You should be impressed. My eyes locked with Evans. He gave a sharp nod. We had it. She had just confessed to the forgery. You practiced it, I asked, keeping her talking. I perfected it, she corrected. So just sign the paper. Aurora, stop being a martyr. You are beaten. Sign it so we can move on. I need to think about it, I said. Don't think too long, Kendra snapped. I have people waiting. I hung up. My hand was shaking, but this time it was from the thrill of the hunt. We got her, Marissa said, hitting save on her recorder. I practiced your signature for 3 hours. That is the ball game. I will transcribe that immediately and attach it to an emergency motion, Evan said, already typing on his phone. We can get the restraining order upgraded and the fraud investigation expedited. But the victory lasted exactly 10 seconds. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't a text. It was a notification from my security system. And then another, and another. Motion detected front porch. I looked at the live feed. A man in a blue windbreaker was standing at my front door. He wasn't a delivery driver. He was holding a clipboard and a large toolbox. Behind him, the white van, Mike's van, was pulling into the driveway again. I ran to the door and threw it open. What are you doing? I shouted. I told you to stay off my property. The man on the porch looked at me, unbothered. He held up a piece of paper. We are here to finish the job, ma'am, he said. We got the call an hour ago to resume immediately. I am the owner, I screamed. I ordered you to stop. I know, the man said, shifting his weight. But the client sent us this. It overrides your order. He handed me the paper. It was a document titled General Power of Attorney. It stated that I, Aurora Rivera, granted full authority to Kendra Vale to make decisions regarding the property at 1402 Oak Street, due to my mental incapacitation and inability to manage financial affairs. It was dated 3 days ago, and at the bottom, there was my signature again, the perfect signature she had bragged about. I looked at Evan, who had walked up behind me. He took the paper, his face turning pale. She didn't just forge a permit, Evan whispered, staring at the document. She forged a declaration that you are insane. She is trying to legally seize control of your entire life. I looked past the contractor to the street. Kendra's car was parked there. She wasn't hiding this time. She rolled down the window, lowered her sunglasses, and gave me a little wave. She hadn't been negotiating. She had been stalling while she printed the next lie. The conference room at the city planning department was windowless and cold, the kind of room designed to drain the fight out of people. But as I sat across the metal table from my family, I didn't feel drained. I felt focused. On one side of the table sat me, Evan Ramirez, and Detective Miller. On the other side sat Kendra, my parents, and their lawyer, Mr. Gower, who looked like he was regretting every life choice that had led him to this moment. The air was so thick with tension you could taste the ozone. Kendra was not cowering. She was leaning back in her chair, holding the forged power of attorney document like a royal decree. She wore a bright red blazer, clearly dressed for a victory lap. "We are wasting time," Kendra said, sliding the document toward the city attorney who was presiding over the meeting. "As you can see, I have full legal authority to manage my sister's affairs. She agreed to this verbally months ago because she knew she couldn't handle the stress of the renovation. She is just having a breakdown now because the bill came due." Evan Ramirez didn't even blink. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a transparent overlay sheet. He placed it on top of the power of attorney Kendra had just presented. Then, he placed a copy of the building permit application underneath it. "Mr. City Attorney," Evan said, his voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. "If you look at the signature on the permit application dated 3 weeks ago and the signature on this power of attorney dated 3 days ago, you will notice something miraculous." He held the papers up to the light. "They are identical," Evan said. "Not just similar, identical, down to the microscopic tremor in the tail of the A. No human being signs their name exactly the same way twice. It is a biological impossibility. The only way this happens is if the signature is a trace. A copy, a forgery." Kendra's confident smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. "That proves nothing. She has a consistent hand." "It proves you are using a template," Evan corrected. "And since my client was in Chicago when the permit was signed, and standing in my office when this power of attorney was allegedly signed, unless she has the power of teleportation, these documents are fraudulent." Mr. Gower, their lawyer, shifted uncomfortably. "Now, hold on. My client asserts—" "Let's ask the contractor," Detective Miller interrupted. He nodded to the back of the room. Mike, the contractor, stood up. He looked terrified. "Mr. Henderson," Miller asked, "in the 3 weeks you were demolishing the property, did you ever see Aurora Rivera?" "No, sir," Mike said quickly. "Never saw her, never spoke to her. The only people I dealt with were Kendra and Mrs. Vale. They gave the orders. They gave the payments. They told me the owner was unavailable." "Because she was unavailable," my mother burst out, clutching her purse. "She works too much. We were helping her." "Helping her by demolishing her garage?" I asked quietly. "You have a massive house." Kendra slammed her hand on the table, abandoning her legal pretense for raw emotion. "You live there alone like a hermit. I just wanted one room, a tiny studio. Why are you so greedy? You have $880,000 worth of house, and you won't give your own sister 500 square feet." "Because it is not your house," Evan said, silencing her. "And in the state of Illinois, you do not get to claim a small corner of someone else's property by committing identity theft." "It is not identity theft," Kendra screamed. "It is family business." The city attorney cleared his throat. He opened a laptop folder. "Actually," he said, "we have some technical data that suggests otherwise." He turned the laptop screen around. It showed a server log from the city's online portal. When the permit application was submitted digitally, the attorney explained, it was uploaded from an IP address registered to a residential cable account at Oakwood Apartments. Unit 4B, that is the residence of Mr. and Mrs. Vale. He looked at my parents. "Furthermore," he continued, The email address used to create the account rivera.consultings@gmail.com was accessed exclusively from a device with a MAC address that matches an iPhone registered to Kendra Vale. The room went deadly silent. The technology had stripped them naked. They couldn't argue with IP logs. They couldn't argue with device IDs. And finally, Evan added, playing the last card, the money, the deposit paid to the contractor came from KVR Management, LLC, an entity registered to Kendra and Maria Vale, using the same Oakwood Apartments address. You didn't just want a room to sleep in. You built a corporate entity to manage a rental unit inside my client's home. You intended to profit from this fraud. My father, who had been silent until now, stood up. His face was red. We didn't know about the signature, he stammered. We thought Aurora would come around. You funded the LLC. Dad, I said, looking him in the eye. Your name is on the bank account that wired the money. Don't lie to me. He sat back down, defeated. Kendra looked around the room. She saw the detective writing in his notebook. She saw the city attorney frowning. She saw her own lawyer closing his folder, signaling he was done defending the indefensible. Panic took over. I just needed to finish it, she blurted out, her voice high and desperate. If she had just signed the completion paper, it would have been fine. I would have paid the fines. I just needed her to sign it so the permit would be valid. Thank you, Evan said calmly. That is an admission of intent to defraud. You just confirmed that the goal of your recent communication was to coerce my client into ratifying a forged document. The city attorney closed his laptop. That is enough for me. The permit is hereby revoked and flagged as fraudulent. The citation against Ms. Rivera is suspended pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. We are separating the file. Ms. Rivera is now the victim of record, not the violator. Detective Miller stood up. Kendra Vale, I am placing you under arrest for forgery, identity theft, and filing false instruments with a public office. Kendra gasped. You can't arrest me. I am her sister. That is the only reason you aren't in cuffs right now, Miller said. But you are coming to the station for booking. Evan stood up and looked at Mr. Gower. Here is the offer. It is non-negotiable. It expires in 10 minutes. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. 1, Evan listed. Your clients will pay for the full restoration of the garage to its original condition. Not a patch job. Original materials. Certified contractors of our choosing. 2, they will pay all legal fees incurred by Aurora Rivera. 3, Kendra pleads no contest to the fraud charges. And 4, a permanent restraining order for all 3 of them. No contact, no approach within 500 feet, no emails, no texts. If they violate this, the civil settlement is void, and we pursue maximum damages. Kendra looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Aurora, please. You are going to bankrupt us. I looked at her. I looked at the sister who had smiled while she destroyed my home. I looked at the parents who had funded her betrayal. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just the cool, clean feeling of a problem being solved. You bankrupted yourself when you bet against me, I said. Sign the paper. They signed. An hour later, I stood in my driveway. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the white van that was finally leaving for good. The garage door was open, revealing the mess inside. It was ugly. It was broken, but it was mine. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the new key the locksmith had given me. It was heavy, solid brass. I felt the weight of it in my palm. I wasn't just locking a door. I was sealing a vault. The family that had treated me like a resource to be mined was gone. The sister who viewed my success as her safety net was gone. I was alone in my fortress, and for the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like victory. I looked at the ruined walls one last time before hitting the button to close the door. This house is not a place for anyone to learn how to use me anymore, I said to the empty air. The heavy steel door slid down, shutting out the world with a definitive, final thud. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Aurora's decision. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Morgan Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and hit that hype button to help this story get heard by even more people.